Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Chai with Coaches. This is going to be our conversation today about the new year, preparing for the new year, and your intentions, setting intentions, and what else are we talking about today? Because I always mess this part up.
Yeah, it's all about how do you prepare for the next year? Because
Yes.
our thoughts are moving on to the next year. We have plans, we have goals, whatever you want to call them. We're now putting our intention on what's the new thing we want to create in our lives.
Right.
And quite frankly, I haven't been paying attention to next year quite yet. Thanksgiving is the switch on mark for me. What about you? Have you already started thinking about what you want for the new year?
Yes and no. So I have started preparing some stuff for the new year. I have some really cool, projects that I'm working on and some new offerings I'm creating, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But overall, I agree with you. I think Thanksgiving is kind of a switch point where we're like, now is where we start thinking about the plans for the next year. And then after Thanksgiving is done, that's where I kind of go into like actually getting into doing the stuff for next year, preparing for next year actively. But I mean, it's never too early, right? I mean, it's something where if you want to set intentions and figure out where you want to go, and a lot of people talk about resolutions and things that they want to do, and they're like, oh well, I want to set a resolution or make a resolution for this, and what's your resolution going to be? And it's basically you might as well be asking people like, what are you planning on doing that you're never going to do?
No,
Because
exactly.
because resolutions are essentially useless, right? I don't know. I
But
know
they're
very
good for making us feel beat up upon ourselves.
correct, right? They're useless in a positive way, and they're really good at making us feel like crap about ourselves when we don't meet them, right? Because I know people have the same resolution every single year. I did for a long time, right? And the idea of like, oh, I'm just going to do this, and then you sign up for a gym membership, for example, and you never go, right? You go for the first 4 or 5 days, maybe even a couple weeks. By the time February happens or March, no one goes to the gym anymore. I've talked to gym owners about this, and they're like, January and December are like the best time of the year for us, and the rest of the year is kind of just blah, because everyone kind of just signs up and doesn't sign up and doesn't ever, like, they don't ever cancel actively until like later on, but they let it ride for like 6 months before they cancel anything.
If even that short of a period. I used to go to the gym. I used to take group classes all the time, and we would always say, "Oh God, there comes the New Year resolution, people, because the classes will be crowded. You don't have your usual spot, right? We all have our usual spot. It's kind of funny, even though we are moving all around, we still have our usual spot." And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. We have these good intentions, but we don't have a plan to put those intentions into place.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a good thing for us to focus on, because regardless of what you want to call it, we have these manifestations, whether you want to say goals, resolutions, whatever it is. The question is, just like you said earlier, what are the plans? You said towards the end of the year, you put a plan in place in order to be able to get to that next level.
Right.
And most people don't take the time to put the plan. They just kind of have a desire, and then I suppose they were hoping that it would magically fall into place. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. They think it's going to be, and I think you and I talk about manifestation a lot of times and putting energy out there in the universe. But I think people misread that into thinking that just saying I want this thing, and that's all they need to do. And the same thing with planning. You can make all the plans in the world. I mean, I had a lot of plans for 2020 that didn't go so well. And so I think planning is one thing, but then putting it into action is the key, right? That's the real key, is like making actionable steps for yourself. Where no matter how small you start, you can just start as small as you need to start, right? I mean, it's behavioral change at the end of the day. And behavioral change is essentially changing the way you think, not just the way you act, but the way you think, the way you process information, the way you react to things. Reactions are very difficult to control. And if you don't take the time to actually say, let me start small and be patient with myself as I'm doing these new things, taking part in these new activities, it's gonna be really hard on you, and you're not gonna be able to sustain it. One awesome example for me, at least that's relevant to me right now, I'm learning Japanese right now, very slowly compared, because my 37-year-old brain is not what it was when I was 4 years old, and I wish I learned it back then. But I started about 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, yeah, October. And so I've been learning it. I've been slowly learning it, but I'm making a lot of mistakes. And at this age, it's like we're not okay with making mistakes. At a certain point, you're like, oh, it's not okay to make mistakes, but it is, though, because you're making mistakes in a completely new arena. You're not making mistakes in something you've done for 10 years, 15 years. If you're doing that, then you're probably not good at what you do, frankly. But if you're making mistakes in a new arena and something that you've never experienced, that you have very little or no exposure to, that's okay. And we're just not used to feeling that way where we're making those mistakes. And that's the same thing with behavioral change. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna change. You're not gonna be able to stick the landing every single time you try this new behavior. But you got to keep doing it. Persistence is what's going to get you there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, I don't like this phrase, but I think it applies here. We're failing forward. I too have something that I'm working on. And just today, I've been doing this for 5 months now. And just today, I decided to, I'm going to switch it around. I'm going to change the action steps from this thing to this thing. And I'm just going to see how does it go? Because you're constantly making adjustments, but you have to do it both internally and externally. So the internal adjustments, the behavior, the mindset, right? That needs to shift as well in order with the action steps that you're taking. Because a lot of my clients come to me because they're very, very hardworking, but they're not getting their results. And it's because of those internal blocks. So you got to see the two together. So when I think about planning, I also put action steps as part of the plan. Because otherwise, you're right. I think that at least if you have a plan, even if you don't put the action steps, you're a little bit closer to taking the time to create the action steps. If you have nothing, if there is no plan whatsoever, you have no idea of how you're going to go, or you're not taking the first steps to even learn what's right and what's working and what's not working, then you're stuck. And then from my perspective, it becomes an identity thing. In other words, if you're going to remain stuck in a particular place regularly, then I would almost argue you're not interested in moving forward. Many, many years ago, there used to be, I think it was a United Airlines poster that I used to see. It's an advertisement, and they said, you know what, if you miss the, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, the a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., blah, 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 all the way up to 10 p.m. flight, the shuttle to New York, then guess what? You don't want to go to New York. I mean, they basically had a shuttle running every hour. And so if you're in that same place over and over and over again, there's an identity that is kind of stuck on where I am today. And whether it feels comfortable or not, that's kind of what needs to be shifted before you can even move forward.
100%. And it's a common thing with clients, right? And they think they want to go in a certain direction, but that direction is actually not meaningful to them at the end of the day, right? They're like, oh, I need to do this. Why I need to do this? Well, I've never been asked that question before. What do you mean, why do I need to do this? Obviously, I want to go in that direction, right? I went to the client who wanted to make, $1 million a year, and he was already making 250. And he's like, I want to make $1 million a year. I'm like, okay, cool. That's great. We can get you there. Let's figure out what's stopping you right now. What's holding you back? And talking about it, I was like, what's meaningful to you about $1 million? And he was flabbergasted by the question. He's like, what do you mean what's meaningful to me about $1 million? It's $1 million. It's meaningful to everybody. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's meaningful to some people. But at the end of the day, even that $1 million by itself has no value, right? None. What is it going to do for you? What's it going to enable you to do that you can't do right now? And people don't take that into account and think about that. And ultimately, he didn't really, because he got into $300,000 a year for the last 5 years. He's had this $1 million goal, and he never made it because it wasn't meaningful to him. He was already able to do the things he could do right now that lit his life up, right? And once he realized that he could do that, he actually started enjoying his life more. And we're in the same situation, right? Where we're like putting these ideas in our heads that we want to do this because it's cool, or it's what that person over there wants to do, or it's what we should be doing, right? As opposed to what we want to do and what's meaningful to us. And so we set these goals, even like these resolutions, for example. It's like, oh, what would my friends think I should do as a resolution? Or what would make me look better if I wanted to make a resolution? Instead of saying, what do I want to achieve next year for myself? Like for my own, for personal edification, what do I care to achieve next year? That's a question that people don't generally ask as much as they could. And when you start with that, it's much more meaningful, and you have a much higher chance of success of sticking with it.
I was looking at my financial statements because I'm a previous financial analyst. So to me, I start thinking about taxes, tax preparation, tax planning. So I was looking at my accounting software, And I was shocked to notice that I not only did I make my revenue goal that I had sort of pre-pandemic, everything went to hell in a handbasket, but I blew through my profit margin. My bottom line was a lot higher than what I'd even expected. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, huh, I don't really care. Like this, I should be elated. I should literally be elated. And I was like, okay, let me think about the next goal. Because exactly like you said, I picked a goal that was more from a logical standpoint, which is exactly what I teach people not to do. I literally have an exercise teaching people on this one subject. And I
Yeah.
realize it's exactly what I'm doing for myself. That number was totally meaningless. It didn't make me, I didn't even feel like I had achieved it. Had I not looked at it, I wouldn't have, I mean, obviously I would not have known, but either way, it was meaningless to me whether I made it or not, which was such a shocking thing for me. I'm like, so this is why I tell people not to come up with just a number based on what you think. Okay, this plus 25% or this plus 50%, whatever is like sort of thing that we pull out of our hats, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think we all fall into that trap a little bit sometimes, because there is that, it's that polarity between the head and the heart, right? It's like, what is your head telling you want, and what is your heart telling you want, right? And sometimes those things are aligned, but most of the time they're not, right? It's like you got to kind of fight back and forth and see which one's which. And what you want to do is find that thing where they're aligned, right? And align them actively, so you can actually say, okay, what's meaningful to me, and what do I want to accomplish here? And then you go out there and do it, because at the end of the day, that's really what you want to do. And for folks out there, they're thinking about next year and pondering what their next steps could be. What questions you might want to ask yourself is, what do I want to achieve next year for myself? Not achieving in the sense of like success or even just professional, but what do I want to do next year, right? What do I want to accomplish? Whether it's climbing a mountain, whether it's traveling to 15 countries, whether it's spending more time with your kids, whether it's playing tennis 3 times a day, 3 times a month with your family and your friends or whatever. And or maybe it is going to the gym, right? Maybe it is losing some weight, and that's okay as well. But if it's meaningful for you, then meaningful to you. I can't talk. If it's meaningful for you, then do it, right? But put a plan in place. How often are you going to go to the gym? How are you going to know you're doing well, right? How often are you going to play tennis? How are you going to coordinate that? Who are you going to be your accountability partners when you do this kind of thing?
And schedule it on your calendar.
Yes.
Um, you know, Again, pre-pandemic, I used to be at the gym 3 to 4 times a week. So I was in the gym a lot because I used to take these classes and they were offered. So whenever the class I liked was offered, I would make sure that I was going there. And anytime I added or changed my schedule in any way, everything's on my calendar, but every time I add or change my schedule, it would take me at least 2 months of me staring at that calendar notification before I actually got into the habit, made it a new habit of mine. And I've learned that about myself. So I will sporadically go to something new. So I've since all the gyms have shut down, I've actually now joined a completely different gym because my goal is being better at swimming. So I joined a gym. I've talked to you about my swimming issues. I finally joined a gym that has a swimming pool.
Congrats.
I'm very proud of myself because now I have to go back and take the time to figure out, okay, I have to look at when their schedule is, put it on my calendar. And that's one thing I wish I did with social media, that I would actually put times on my calendar for me to do my own marketing. That's one of the things I fall off the ladder on because I'm just not a big fan of it. But the point is, if you put it on your calendar and you look at it and you know yourself well enough to say, it's going to take me a while, it's going to take me X amount of time to really get into the rhythm, then when you do it once, for me, let's say I go once a month in the beginning, it'll probably be more like 3 or 4 times a month. I'm not going to beat myself up because I know that's my pattern and I know I will get over it. Whatever I do, I just keep going for it. Like some days just being at the gym, I tell myself, is a win. I don't have to go out and be crazy that day. Just showing up was a win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I was trying to get back into the gym after the pandemic was kind of easing up a little bit and gyms were opening, before I did my own thing. But I used to do that, exactly that. I'd be like, okay, let me go to the gym physically. And going to the gym was getting out of the house was a big deal after a year and a half of sitting in my house and doing nothing but chill with my dog. So that was a big deal. But going there was frustrating because it's like there's no machines. It was packed. It was, so I'm like, okay, well, what do I want to do for myself now? How am I going to get this done? So like I had a goal to try to lose weight because I had gained weight during the pandemic. I was not as healthy as I wanted to be. And so I wanted to.
But you were on the bread trend, huh?
Oh yeah, carbs up the wazoo.
No. What I mean is making the bread. What was it? Sourdough was the big deal. Everybody was making sourdough.
I did not make bread. I did not make my own bread. No. I bought my bread.
I'm just teasing. Go ahead.
Yes. I probably was responsible for about maybe 0.5% of Amazon stock going up. I take that with pride, and Uber Eats as well. But it's something where it's like I want to cut those things down, right? So I'm trying to do what I can to make sure that works out. And so it was just that ultimate goal was what I was looking at. It wasn't necessarily how I got there. It was just getting that goal in mind. And that's also the important thing too, is not just looking at just the action and getting locked into that action, because at the end of the day, why are you doing that action? For an ultimate goal, right? The end result, the why, if you will, is going to be what's pushing you forward to say, I really want to do this, or I don't really want to do this. Which one is it? Which one's more important? If you have the why, if you have a solid why or a solid end goal, end result you're going after, you will find a way to achieve that. You'll find a way to get there, right? And if you don't, if it's not important to you, no matter how great your plan is, you can have the best Kevin McAllister Home Alone plan. Did you watch Home Alone? I know you don't watch movies, so.
I actually did watch Home Alone, the original one. So is that what the boy's name? Because I had no idea who Kevin McAllister is.
That was Macaulay Culkin's name in the movie.
Got it. Okay.
So you can have the best possible Kevin McAllister foolproof plan going, but if that goal is not meaningful to you, the plan doesn't matter. You're not gonna follow through in the plan, right? You'll maybe even start the plan, but you're not gonna follow through with it. So it's kind of like the bookends, right? It's like decide what your goal is, what the why is, why you're doing what you want to do, and then work on figuring out a plan to get there. And start with a couple small steps, and then the middle will fill itself in over time.
Yeah, and get an accountability buddy or get a coach. Get somebody that. This is where masterminds, if you're in your own business, this is where masterminds become really, really useful because it keeps people accountable, and you want somebody who is equally dedicated to their goal, because if you're going to have other people who are going to fall down by the wayside, then guess what? There's more excuse on your part to also do the same thing. And this is why I like working with my own business coach, because he remembers if I commit to something, he remembers that I committed to that thing. He writes it down. He's like, all right, Naheed, I didn't get the email because I'm supposed to email him my progress during the week. And so if it's important to you, you will take the time, the expense, the energy, whatever it happens to be, to make it useful for you. Because at the end of the day, you're going to go back and you're going to look at your life, and you're not going to pay attention as much, and this seems cliched, on what you've succeeded at, right? I just told you I made my goal, and it's meaningless to me. But you will pay attention to all the things that you felt was meaningful for you, but you never even tried. Those are the things that you're going to. This is the only reason why I've joined a gym, paying twice as much as my old gym, so that I can go swimming, that I have yet to do once. Since I've joined, but in my defense, I only joined last week. But the point is, you're gonna then make the effort to do it.
Yeah, and I promise it wasn't a planned situation where Naheed mentioned the mastermind, because mastermind groups are awesome, and I'm actually starting a mastermind group, 2 mastermind groups actually in January. One is going to be for business owners, and one is going to be for coaches specifically, in terms of building the business and making sure that they understand how they're doing what they need to do, setting goals, accountability, as well as getting partners to come in and talk about different services, whether it's marketing, whether it's bookkeeping, CPAs, get questions answered, really be a resource for people. And so that's starting in January. Shameless plug time.
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead, because that's what we need. I think that's what we're learning during this pandemic. One thing we all learned is that we have a very hard time as a human species to exist in solo, individually, in silos, right? We need that other individual input from other people. We thrive from hearing of other people who succeed, and we thrive from them supporting us to succeed ourselves.
Yeah, and like you said, it's that external support sometimes that it's external perspective sometimes too, where it's like, again, we get locked into these ideas of like, take again, I mean, Home Alone is a great example. Honestly, like you have to calculate the plan that's like set in stone. Like this is an amazing plan, but what about outside the house, right? What about people looking in from the outside and saying, okay, what about this, this, and this? You're seeing it from your point of view. This is an amazing plan, but someone looking at it from the outside who's not immersed in it can tell you, hey, by the way, you missed this over there, or you missed that over there. Or what about if you thought about this way, right? It's not even about missing something. It's just like looking at things a little bit differently from a different point of view, a different perspective. And that's the value that a coach can have. That's the value that accountability partners can have. That's the value that a lot of people in general, outside of yourself, can have on your ability to succeed. If you don't think about that, if you don't account for that and like have that kind of outside perspective, you will get locked into one way of doing something. And if it doesn't go your way, you'll get really, really frustrated. So consider those kind of things, getting accountability partners. And if you're interested in the mastermind group, please feel free to comment below or send me an email. I'd be glad to talk to you about it and see if it would make sense for you to jump into it. But Naheed, I talked about some of my actions that I tell folks to do. You talked about a little bit of yours. I know we're coming up on time here. So what are some things you want to leave folks with in terms of as they're planning for next year, as they're going into Thanksgiving holidays and looking into the next year?
So I put what you said slightly differently, which is why is it meaningful? That's how you talk about it. And what I would say is start by creating a vision, a tangible vision with the end in mind, right? So close your eyes and imagine that you are at that place. And when you are at the end of whatever it is that you're looking for, or even interim steps, let's just say if it's a long-term goal, stop and close your eyes and feel the emotion. What does it feel like to be in that spot? What does it feel like to have achieved that milestone? And quite frankly, if you cannot tap into those emotions over there and it's not a really strong, good feeling for you, then probably this is, like you were saying, not something that is meaningful for you. You're probably doing it because of other reasons, usually external reasons. But if you can close your eyes, imagine what that feels like. What you're doing is you're magnetizing opportunities that's going to bring more and more of that to you. Our brains are hardwired in a way that it can't tell past, present, and future. So the more you're spending time trying to visualize something, as far as your brain and your subconscious is concerned, it thinks it's happening now. And it will create the situations and it will help you, it will facilitate you taking the steps to create the situations to bring that to you in the now moment, whatever that now moment, even if it's 6 months from now.
Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, when you're talking about that why, you're talking about that end result, you do want to create as clear a picture as possible in your head, right? And use all your senses. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you touching? What are you smelling? Experience all of those things. What are you feeling inside? What kind of pride are you feeling about having achieved what you achieved? Those are, it sounds kind of like kooky, but it really works. And the more real you can make it, the more tangible you can make that feeling, that moment for yourself, the more likely you are to, like she said, magnetize that situation towards you, right? That's really the power of that why, right? I talk about it in an abstract and kind of like saying like what's meaningful for you, what's the why for you. But what she's talking about is exactly how to picture that, how to actually visualize that for yourself, and how to solidify that in the future, right? It's going to be in the present in your mind, and so your mind's going to try to reconcile those two things to make it happen as soon as possible and more effectively as possible. So awesome, Naheed, thanks a lot. Awesome, always a good time. We will take a break, obviously, I think through the holidays, and I think we're going to come back in January. What do you think?
How about doing one more in December?
Okay, we can do one let's do one before the holidays in December, early December. We'll announce
early December.
Yeah, and then we'll take the break for the rest of the year. But thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Stay tuned. Like I said, we got one more left for the end of the year. Let us know what you liked about today. If you like the stream today, like the content, please leave a comment below. Let us know what you liked. Let us know what you want to see in the future. Let us know what you want to see next year. What kind of content do you want us to talk about in the new year that might support you in your growth and your development and your goals for yourself? Hit the like button, hit subscribe. Please share this to someone that you think might find it valuable. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.